So in the previous classes, we have studied about phase diagrams, means in relation to solidification after the non-Newtonian fluid part. And then we have studied fully equilibrium solidification using Lever's rule, and non-equilibrium solidification means zero diffusivity in the solid and full diffusivity in the liquid using Scheele's model. And we have seen how the concentration varies for different cases, and how the microstructure evolves basically schematically we have seen, and the cooling curves for different concentrations for a binary alloy eutectic means binary alloy eutectic phase diagram. So today what we are going to do is we are going to study about two processes, okay, which are used very much in the industry, very industrially relevant processes involving solidification and concentration variation, because our aim is to see concentration variation. So both these processes are 1D processes, okay, so they can be approximated as one-dimensional processes. That's why we can study them analytically. If it were two-dimensional or three-dimensional process, then we would need uh, numerical modeling basically to analyze these processes. Okay. So the first process that we are going to study is known as directional solidification or Bridgman solidification. Okay. So it can be this directional solidification can occur in different types of processes. For example, for manufacturing turbine blades, we use directional solidification. Okay, I will just show you the example in the slide in a moment. Okay. So what happens is that there is a mold which is filled with liquid metal, which is nowadays it is superalloy, and it is held within a furnace, and gradually it is pulled out with some velocity v, very small velocity v. So the mold comes out of the furnace at a very small velocity. Typical velocity is around 10 centimeter per hour. Okay, so you can imagine that it's quite a slow velocity. It takes a few hours for the mold to come out. Okay, so because the outside is at cold temperature and inside is at hot temperature, all the solidification occurs at the transition region, at the boundary of the furnace and the cold outside cold container. Okay. So what happens is that when the initial grains are nucleated, initial dendrites are nucleated, no further grains can nucleate, because in the hot region anyway there cannot be any nucleation because it is too hot, and in the solidified region obviously it is solidified, so there cannot be any nucleation. So whatever the initial grains that are found, those only continue to grow, and we get long elongated grains which have no grain boundaries along the length direction, along the longitudinal direction. Okay. So I will show you some examples. But by using this process, we get much superior creep resistance for turbine blades. So turbine blades are manufactured like this. Directional solidification is also found in other processes such as normal casting or directional casting, where you have an insulated chamber, but you provide a chill like a high thermal conductivity block, like a copper block at the bottom. Okay, you must know about chills. So if I put a chill at the bottom, all the heat transfer will occur towards the downward side. It won't occur on the sides because the other sides are insulated. So solidification will proceed from the bottom towards the top. Okay. So this will also be like a 1D solidification. Although the mold is not moving, this will also be like a 1D solidification. Okay. In this case also we can study the concentration variation. So I will come to this problem and we will discuss more about this problem, but let me show you, because yesterday Nikhil's was asking what is that let just going outside the course a little bit, just to see how turbine blades are manufactured nowadays. Okay. So as you know, yes, question. So as you
No,
know,
sir, just
yes.
joined now, sir. Sorry. So this is Nikhil English. I just joined now. I'm sorry, sir.
It's fine, it's fine. So I have not yet discussed anything important. You can go through the recording. So I was saying that we will just digress a little bit from the course, from the modeling part, and just I will explain a little bit about turbine blades because it is of interest, means it is interesting to know. Okay. Although we don't want to study about turbine blades directly in this course, but indirectly we are going to study 1D solidification, and manufacturing of turbine blades is a type of 1D solidification. So as I was explaining yesterday, long back when initial turbine blades were manufactured, they were cast using investment casting. So there was a ceramic mold and you poured liquid metal in it, and then it solidified, it formed an equiax grain structure, means everywhere nuclei formed. So everywhere the cooling was uniform, and it resulted in formation of large number of small solid nucleus. Okay, so each of the nuclei grew into one solid grain. Okay, so ultimately the entire grain structure was like a equiax grain structure. So multiple grains were together like this. So by using, so once the discovery was made about directional solidification, okay, so the properties greatly improved. How? Because I have shown you just now how the directional solidification works. So with this you can see that the grain structures are, so all the grains are long grains like this. You can see from this itself that there are long grains like this along the length. So there are no grain boundaries along the length direction. All the grain boundaries are along the cross-sectional direction. Okay. So along the longitudinal direction, along the length of the blade, because there is no grain boundary, it has very high creep resistance along that direction. So it has directional properties. The creep resistance is more in the longitudinal direction, along the length direction. So because the turbine blades rotate at high speed and undergo very large centrifugal stress, they tend to elongate because they are undergoing very large centrifugal stress. They tend to elongate because of creep, because they are operating at high temperature for a long duration. Okay, and this is very harmful because the outside of the turbine blade may strike the casing, and this may lead to catastrophic failure of the turbine. So the temperature is limited by the creep resistance of the material, and by modifying the microstructure we can see that we can increase the creep resistance significantly. So this was a big achievement when it was discovered few decades back. So nowadays all the large turbine blades are made using directional solidification. For example, steam turbines. Steam turbines are generally much larger than gas turbines. So all steam turbine blades are made using directional solidification. For uh, aircraft turbines, the process has moved forward. Nowadays we use a single crystal. Okay, so even, which is even better than directional solidification, because single crystals are also prepared by directional solidification. But what happens is that there is a throttle which is not shown here, or a very small neck region through which only one or two grains can pass. Although initially large number of grains are found at the bottom, only one or two grains can pass, and this single grain then solidifies and occupies the entire region. Okay, so it is also a directional solidification process, but because of a very narrow region which is given here, and the nucleation occurs outside, only one grain will pass through the narrow region, narrow twisted region, and it will occupy the entire volume. So you can see that there are no grain boundaries because there are no grains. It's a single grain, single crystal is there. Okay, so it's a single grain. Do you know what is a grain? A grain is a, so the difference between two grains is that the crystallographic orientation, means the atoms are arranged in different directions in each grain, in arbitrary directions. Okay, when I say that there is one grain here, another grain here, so the atoms of say nickel are arranged in a different direction here as compared to the atoms of nickel here. So as a result,
Sir,
there is a grain boundary where there is a mismatch. Yes.
does it mean that the plane in which, I mean the orientation, if we take the normal to a given plane for a given grain, it will be
Yes.
same throughout the grain. Is that correct?
Yes. Within a grain, the, so if the metal has a FCC structure, okay. So within a grain, all the atoms will be aligned along like as a FCC structure or a BCC structure. But if you go to other grain, it will also have FCC structure, but that FCC structure will have a different orientation. Okay, is it clear?
Yes.
And there will be mismatch in the grain boundary. Okay, so with this, within this single crystal there is no mismatch, no grain boundary, so it has very high creep resistance. Okay, so and no defects at all. So that's why nowadays for modern aircrafts we use single crystals, but for steam turbines we don't use single crystals because these are very costly to manufacture, and for steam turbines do not undergo this kind of high temperatures as gas turbines. Gas turbines go up to 1200 degrees centigrade, 1300 degrees centigrade nowadays. Steam turbines go up to 600, 700 degrees centigrade. So for steam turbines, still directional solidification is used, because remember that steam turbines are much larger in size, very large. So each blade may be half meter long. For gas turbine, each blade may be 4-5 centimeters long or slightly longer. Okay. So for manufacturing this kind of very large single crystal is very difficult. There will be some defects, multiple grains will form. So if you work in a company like say GE or Rolls-Royce or similar companies, you will get to know. I have worked on this type of directional solidification where we used to simulate the grain structure using by writing some code how the microstructure will form, and it's quite interesting. Anyway, so as it is shown here, there is increasing resistance to creep deformation along this direction, means as you go towards improved process. So again, digressing, not part of the course, but just because you guys are interested about turbine blades, I would also discuss a little bit about turbine blade material. Okay, how can I remove this? So initially turbine blades were made with by some alloys like nickel based alloys or like steel or nickel based, basically nickel based alloys. Okay, so although the alloys had good properties, it was discovered some few decades back that by suitably mixing a large number of constituents, okay, around 8 to 10 constituents on a base of nickel. So nickel is say around 50%, then around 2 to 3% cobalt, then some small amount of manganese, small amount of iron, so small amount of tungsten, small amount of titanium. By suitably mixing these materials, we get drastic change in properties. So this type of materials are known as superalloys. So what is the basic characteristic of superalloy? Nowadays all the blades are made with superalloys. Okay, so it does not matter whether it's directional solidified or single crystal, they are made with superalloy. So there is a very different kind of microstructure that is formed with superalloy. So if you go to a equiaxed crystal structure for superalloy, it will look at the microscopic scale like this. So you will have grains like this, which are of the order of say 100 micron or few hundred microns or 50 to 100 microns. Okay, in that range, hundreds of microns, so some millimeter range. Now within these grains itself, it was seen that after heat treatment, so this once the casting was done, it was heat treated at a high temperature. After heat treatment, a very peculiar microstructure forms, okay, which has a very small length scale. So you can see here from the bar, this is a electron micrograph. You can see that it is 5 micrometer. Okay, so each of these microstructure is of the order of 200 to 300 nanometer, and these channels are of the order of 30 to 40 nanometer, the channels in between. So very artificial kind of microstructure forms, very alien looking microstructure forms. Okay, like it has been arranged by somebody. All these are arranged in square and this type of channels. Okay, so this is known as gamma prime microstructure. And because of this kind of microstructure, this is within a grain. Okay, remember the grain is very large, of the order of few hundred microns. Within a grain, this type of microstructure again forms. You can say nanoscale structure. So this actually hinders the movement of dislocations. So you might have studied about dislocations previously, you might not have studied. So dislocations are defects which are formed, which are present at the atomic level, and the creep occurs or any deformation occurs, like if you elongate, if you are doing tensile stress, tensile test, okay, elongation occurs by deformation, by movement of dislocations. So this gamma gamma prime microstructure hinders the movement of dislocation. Dislocation cannot move through the square blocks. It has to move through these channels, which provides much more resistance. So just by modifying the metal or alloy, the strength or creep resistance could be significantly improved. Okay. So nowadays we can go to very high temperatures because we use super alloys. So both the processes plays a part in improving the creep resistance. One is that we use directional solidification. So by modifying the microstructure, we are improving the creep resistance, as well as by modifying the material itself. Instead of normal alloy, we are using a super alloy. That is also improving the microstructure. Okay. Sorry, that is also improving the creep resistance. So that is how uh, modern turbine blades are made. So these are lot of research is going on in this area to improve the creep resistance. So every company has their own composition which they are guarding which is very secret. So they won't disclose it. For example, Rolls-Royce will have their own composition, few super alloy compositions, which they are not going to disclose to the public. Similarly, GE also has its own composition. So there is a lot of competition between the different engine manufacturers, aircraft. So main engine manufacturers are Rolls-Royce, Pratt and Whitney, and GE. So there is a lot of competition between them for developing better and better super alloys. Anyway, let us come back to our discussion. Okay. I also had some other slides which I did not show this time, but I guess I can go through it once. We have already discussed about this. So the atomic structure, just for the sake of somebody who is not at all familiar with this type of things, we can go through it once very quickly. Okay. So say you have a pure material. So at the microscopic level, it looks like this. So you have grains like this, and in each grain, the atoms are arranged in a particular manner. So there is a particular crystal structure. It can be BCC crystal structure, body center cubic, or FCC structure. Okay, some nice lattice arrangement is there, and the other grain will have also similar structure, but they may be oriented in different direction. So there will be a mismatch in between. Okay. So when we say about alloys, so like phase A, alpha and phase beta we were discussing, right? So in phase alpha, the atoms of A are very prevalent, and few of the atoms of A are replaced by atoms of B, as I was discussing in a few class back. Okay. So few of the atoms of A are displaced with atoms of B. Okay, it forms a solid solution which is basically an alloy. Okay, with high composition of alpha, A, so it is called as alpha. Similarly, if the atoms of B is prevalent and a few atoms of B are replaced by atoms of A, so this forms another alloy, and this is phase beta. And we cannot keep on replacing large number of atoms of A with atoms of B, because then there will be a lot of distortion in the crystal structure, because the atoms are not of equal size. If the atoms are of equal size, we can keep on just replacing all the atoms by other atoms like copper, nickel. But if they are not of equal size, introducing each atom will distort the crystal structure and cause increase in strain energy. So as a result, what will happen is that after some time you cannot just incorporate any more new atoms. So you reach the limit of solid solubility, as we have discussed previously. Okay. Similarly, you can see here, which we have also discussed previously, if there is a pure material like this, substitutional solid solution, which is a type of alloy where atoms of B is replacing atoms of A, like this it forms. Atoms are typically of similar radius. Again, as I was discussing, if they are exactly of same radius, then we can have any number of atoms of B replacing atoms of A. So any percentage of alloy composition is possible. However, if they are of slightly different size, then atoms of B can replace atoms of A only up to a particular percentage, say 15% atoms or 10% atoms. So that is the limit of solubility. That is the maximum concentration in that alloy. Similarly, there is another type which is known as interstitial solid solution, where one of the atoms is much smaller than the other atom. For example, iron carbon. Okay, iron atoms are much larger as compared to carbon. So the carbon atoms occupy the spaces in between the iron atoms. Okay. Again, because they are not exactly fitting within the spaces, there is distortion and there is a limit up to which the atoms can fit. Okay. So these are some examples: copper and zinc. Okay, this is for substitutional solid solution, and this is for steel, which is iron carbon, basically alloy of iron and carbon. You can see carbon atoms within the iron. And these are some examples of binary alloy microstructure. Okay, so at different percentages. So this is at near eutectic, but hypoeutectic means less than eutectic composition. Okay, so lot of alpha phase is present, which is lead in this case. So this is for lead and tin, and then rest of it is eutectic phase. Okay, alpha phase is the black phase. Rest of these gray areas are eutectic. So if you zoom in here, you will see lamella like this. So if I have this composition, eutectic, exactly eutectic composition, you will see alternate layers of black and white, which is alpha and beta phases, which grew simultaneously. Okay, so this is how eutectic looks like. This is irregular eutectic. There can be regular eutectic also, where they are nicely means in a particular direction. And this is for a concentration which is higher than eutectic concentration. It is known as hyper-eutectic concentration. Here the beta phase will form first, so which is the tin-based phase. So this white colored regions are the beta phase, and then finally some eutectics have formed in between. Okay. This is another example of. So you can see that phase diagrams can be very complicated, but if I just look at only up to this part, this is like a normal eutectic phase diagram up to this part. Okay, rest of it is very complicated. We'll not go into the details. And another thing is that if you consider grains, what we have studied in the previous class about Child's model. Okay, so in Child's model we have seen that which is the actual case in most solidification process. We have seen that concentration increases in the solid. Please switch off your mic. The concentration increases in the solid. Okay. So that is what is seen in real life also. Okay, in real life also what is seen is that initial solid when it forms, initial grain when it forms, it has a low concentration, these dark regions. Then once you go towards the grain boundary, you can see that gradually the color is changing towards gray, means the concentration is increasing. And at the grain boundaries, where finally the final solidification occurs, the concentration is very high. So this is similar to what we have seen in our calculation yesterday, that initial solid forms with a very small concentration. So somewhere around there some nuclei must have formed, and then it grows in all directions. Okay, and while it grows, the next solidification occurs with more and more concentration, and finally towards the grain boundary we have very high concentration. Okay, and within the grain boundaries you can see that very high concentration is formed. So actually these are eutectics which is within at the grain boundaries. So this is how real life microstructure looks like. Okay, this is from an SEM image. So now we will come to our again present study. So we are studying about Bridgman solidification. We will study about Bridgman solidification, okay, which is one-dimensional solidification. And as I was saying, you have a mold which is held within a furnace. The furnace provides a very high temperature so that the liquid superalloy is in a liquid state. Okay, it is held within a ceramic mold. The ceramic mold has a higher melting temperature, so it is solid. Okay. So now the mold is gradually pulled down at a small velocity around 10 centimeter per hour. Okay, when it is pulled down, outside it is cooled by either air cooled or it is chilled by a water circulation as shown here. Okay, so as a result, the entire solidification is located in a very thin region like this. Is shown wrongly here, but actually it will occur somewhere around here. Okay, and whatever initial grains are formed, they only elongate. No new nucleation can occur because nucleation cannot occur in the very hot region, and obviously in the solid also nucleation cannot occur. So whatever initial nuclei have formed, they will only grow they have the space for growing for the entire length of the material. Okay, so that's why we get microstructure like this, elongated structure like this. Okay, so let us study this process, and then we will come to another process which is known as zone melting. Okay. So what I am going to do is I am going to keep, like we do always, we'll keep this open, the diagram open in the other window. Okay, and we will go through some discussion regarding this material. So what we want to know? We want to know the final composition of the product. Okay, final composition means what is the concentration variation from one side to the other side. Say the initial concentration, say we are considering for simplification a binary alloy instead of a super alloy. So binary alloy means that there is a certain composition, initial composition, say 80% nickel, 20% some other material. Okay, all the other materials we are putting together as B. Okay, so or 50% nickel, 50% B. Okay, so we want to see what is the concentration of nickel and what is the concentration of B going from the bottom to the top. Okay, because it will vary along the solidification. So we want to know the final composition of the product, which is the concentration variation along the length of the product. Okay, why do we want to know it? Because properties are dependent on concentration. Okay, so if there is a region where there is high concentration, the property will be different, and if there is a region there is low concentration, the property will be different. So you want the concentration to be as uniform as required, as possible. Okay, so it is desired that the concentration should be as uniform as possible. Okay. So to study this, what we are going to do, we are going to consider a case where we have zero diffusivity in the solid. We are going to consider a more realistic case, a real life scenario where there is zero diffusivity in the solid, but instead of infinite diffusivity in the liquid, there is also finite diffusivity in the liquid. Okay, so the diffusivity in the liquid is not infinite. Hello, hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Internet connectivity actually went for a minute. Just a second. So there was loss of internet connectivity. Okay, so you can hear me clearly now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So we have studied two cases till now. Okay, so one is solidification with infinite diffusivity in both solid and liquid. This is using Lever's rule. When I say we have studied, which means that we know how to calculate the relation between the, like how to find the basically concentration and volume fraction. Okay, and the second case that we have studied is the Childs model, which for which we considered infinite diffusivity in the liquid, but zero diffusivity in the solid. So now we will consider a more realistic case where there is a finite diffusivity in the liquid and zero diffusivity in the solid. This is the most realistic case. In the solid, the diffusivity is almost zero because there is very less chance of diffusion to occur. So it is a good approximation, and in the liquid there is a limited diffusivity. Okay, it cannot be obviously infinite, so it is a limited diffusivity. So we will consider now the 1D solidification which was present here like this. So I have just oriented it in a different manner. So on one side we have solid, on another side we have liquid, and the interface is moving with a velocity v. Okay. So typically when this type of Bridgman solidification occurs, directional solidification occurs, you pull the mold with a constant velocity v, as I was saying 10 centimeter per hour. So typical velocity is like that. So as a result, uh, the solidification rate also depends on how fast you are pulling the mold, because the interface is always located here. So the interface also moves forward in the mold. With respect to the mold, it is moving forward at 10 centimeter per hour. So the interface velocity is also v. Okay. So we can note that if this is the domain, so interface is moving forward with velocity v, and on the other side we have liquid. Okay, and we have a binary alloy. Okay, so it's a mixture of two alloys with initial concentration C0. Okay. So again, to summarize, the solidification interface is moving forward with velocity v due to applied conditions. Initial concentration of liquid is C0. Therefore, the initial solid forms at Kp into C0 concentration. Remember that yesterday we have defined Kp to be concentration in the solid divided by concentration in the liquid. So concentration in the solid is equal to Kp into concentration in the liquid. Now because concentration in the liquid is C0, concentration in the first solid is Kp into C0. Okay. So once the first solid forms at Kp C0 concentration, okay, we'll go back to drawing that we were doing. Once the first solid forms with Kp C0 concentration and the liquid was at C0, so this rest of this excess part, okay, of solute, it has to go somewhere, so it will go into the liquid. As a result, the concentration of the liquid will increase, as we were seeing previously also in Stiles model. Okay, so the concentration in the liquid increases, and because of this, the concentration in the solid also increases. Okay, so concentration in the liquid keeps on increasing, and because the ratio is always maintained, that concentration in the liquid solid by concentration in the liquid is Kp. So once the concentration in the liquid increases, the concentration in the solid also increases. So the concentration of the solid follows a path like this. Okay, follows a path like this, and at steady state, what happens is that, so ultimately the concentration of the entire material, average concentration, has to be C0. So it reaches a steady state when the concentration of the solid becomes equal to C0. Okay. At that point, what is the concentration of the liquid? The concentration of the liquid is C0 by Kp. Okay. So if the concentration of the liquid is C0 by Kp, so for equilibrium condition at the interface, the concentration of the solid will be Kp into C0 by Kp is equal to C0. Please switch off your mic. Please switch off your mic. If the concentration in the liquid is C0 by Kp, concentration in the solid has to be C0 by Kp into Kp. Okay, so which is equal to C0. So at steady state, what do we see? That the concentration in the liquid is C0 by Kp just at the interface, but because there is limited diffusivity, the entire liquid is not at the same concentration. Okay, if it was infinite diffusivity, the entire liquid would have been at the same concentration. Because of limited diffusivity, there is a gradient of concentration that is set up. It is like thermal gradient, like temperature gradient, you can say. So if I have a hot boundary here, the temperature will be very high here and it will go down like this, and far away the temperature will be equal to the temperature of the cold boundary. Same thing happens in the concentration also. So here the concentration is C0 by Kp, and the far away concentration remains as C0, the initial concentration. Okay, so this is known as boundary layer for the concentration. Okay, so a boundary layer for the concentration sets up. Okay, or a gradient sets up, and because of this gradient, what happens? There is diffusion along the direction of the gradient. There is diffusion. So the concentration, so the solutes from this high concentration region diffuses away to the far away solutes. This is exactly similar to conduction. So you have a high temperature here and low temperature here, and the gradient is set up, thermal gradient. So heat transfer occurs from the high temperature to low temperature. So exactly same thing occurs here. You have a high concentration here, low concentration here. and as a result the solute, which is say the B element, okay, it moves from the high concentration region to the low concentration region. Okay. So now if we consider the mechanics of this interface, there are two things. One is that the liquid is at C0 by Kp, very high concentration, and the solid forms at C0 concentration. Okay. So this rest of the solute, okay, this rest of the solute, okay, this rest of the solute, this much length, okay, this is not going into the solid. Okay. So if new solid forms, at that point the concentration was C0 by Kp, but the new solid forms with a concentration of C0. So as a result, the C0 by Kp minus C0, this amount, okay, this amount is extra amount which is not going into the solid. This amount is the extra amount which is not going into the solid. Okay. So what happens to this amount? It goes into the liquid. As a result, it tries to increase the concentration of the liquid. But in the liquid also diffusion is happening. So at steady state, what happens? The amount of solute that is getting rejected, this amount of solute which is moving to the liquid, the same amount of solute is being diffused away to far away. Okay. So that is how you reach steady state. So initially what was happening? Initially when solidification was progressing, the concentration in the liquid was less. At this position the concentration of the liquid was this. At this position the concentration of the liquid was like this. Okay. So concentration of the liquid was this and the concentration of solid was this. So because the gradient was less, the diffusion was less, so the amount of solute which was getting rejected while solidification was occurring was more than the gradient. As a result, more accumulation was occurring in the liquid. So after some time, the concentration boundary looked like this. Okay. So more accumulation had occurred. So after some time, the concentration boundary looked like this. So more accumulation had occurred, but still the gradient was less, so less diffusion was occurring and more accumulation was occurring. So after some time, once the gradient has reached this condition, at this moment the diffusion is exactly equal to the solute that is getting removed from this due to solidification. So as a result, the concentration does not increase in the liquid anymore. So the concentration in the liquid remains as C0 by Kp, and the concentration in the solid for further solidification it will remain as C0 until it reaches towards the end. Towards the end, because there is no position for the means no space for diffusion to occur. So the concentration will again start building up. So at the end, the concentration in the liquid will go up, and as a consequence, the concentration in the solid will also go up. So the final concentration will look something like that. So initially, it starts with a low concentration C0 by Kp. Sorry, this is C0 into Kp. Okay, not C0 by Kp. Kp into C0. Initial concentration, and then so is note this down. Okay, in your notes it is C0 by Kp. So it reaches steady state. So in the steady state, the solid forms at C0, liquid is at C0 by Kp, and then it proceeds at C0. And when the boundary layer comes in contact with the final boundary, then again the concentration starts building up in both the liquid and the solid. So concentration in the solid increases. Okay. So the entire zone can be divided into three parts. The initial part, which is known as the initial transient, where the concentration is increasing up to the steady state. Then the most of the length of the solid, which is the steady state, and then a small region. So initial region is also small, and the small final region where the concentration increases. This is known as the final transient. Okay. So what we are going to do in our class today is we are going to study about the steady state part. In the last year, I also studied or discussed about the initial transient, but I guess this is not required. It is outside the scope of the course, and we don't want to go into too much details. Okay, so we'll just discuss about steady state part. Although in the notes this initial transient part is there, you can skip over this without any problem. Okay. So we'll study about the steady state part. The final transient is too difficult to study. Initial transient can be studied with lot of approximation, but you need lot of approximation to simplify it because it's a transient process. So both the initial and final transient process is very difficult to study using analytical solution. So we'll just focus on the steady state part. Okay. So all this is written here, what I have discussed. Okay. So you can go through this later on. This is just what I have discussed. I will just read once. The solidification interface is moving forward with velocity v due to applied conditions. Initial concentration of liquid is C0. Okay. Therefore, the initial solid forms with concentration KpC0. As a result of solute rejection at the interface, solute builds up ahead of the interface. Okay. So the solute concentration increases. Okay. The solute accumulated ahead of the interface is transferred to the faraway liquid because of diffusion, as we have discussed. So a concentration gradient is set up as shown in the figure. Like this, a concentration gradient is set up. The rate of solute removed by diffusion is proportional to the concentration gradient. This is important. Okay. Rate of solute removed by diffusion is proportional to the concentration gradient. So initially the rate of rejection means removal of solute from the solid to the liquid, is higher than the rate of removal, rate of diffusion basically. So as a result, the solute accumulates further and thus the interface concentration increases. As I have shown here, the interface concentration keeps on increasing. Okay. So this leads to more diffusion. Eventually equilibrium is reached where the rate of solute rejection due to solidification is equal to the rate of removal by diffusion. Okay. So once the equilibrium is reached, the equilibrium solid concentration has to be C0, otherwise the final average concentration will be very different. So as a result, the liquid concentration is C0 by Kp. Okay. So this continues until towards the end when the boundary layer comes in contact with the end and there is no space for diffusion. The concentration increases further at this stage. Okay. So there are three stages: initial transient, steady state and final transient. We will discuss about the final transient process. Sorry, we will discuss about the steady state process, not the final. Final transient is too difficult to capture analytically. We study about the steady state process. Okay. Any questions up to this point?
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, why is there a change in concentration in the liquid phase? Isn't the diffusion good enough?
No, that's the entire point of this assumption that there is limited diffusivity in the liquid. Okay. So because of limited diffusivity, it's like limited thermal conductivity, not infinite thermal conductivity. So similar to that, if there is limited diffusivity, it takes a certain time for this solute to go from this point to the faraway liquid. Okay, to the faraway liquid. So as a result, although it is the solute is moving from here to here, there is always a gradient setup. If we had infinite diffusivity, then only there won't be any gradient and the concentration will be like that. But the diffusivity is not infinite or not very large. Okay, it is about 3 orders of magnitude larger, but still much less. Okay, still it is say in absolute terms it is around 10 to the power -8 or -7 meters square per second, something like that. So as a result of this limited diffusivity, the gradient is set up in the liquid also. Okay, if you have a very small zone, very small liquid region, you can ignore the gradient. But for a typical long region like more than few millimeters, you have to consider that there is a gradient in the liquid. This we have seen also from simulations. We can easily simulate that and we will see that. Now today I don't have time, otherwise I would have shown some simulation results from our cases. We can simulate this type of solidification and we can easily, like our students are doing it, and we can see the concentration gradient. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us try to study the steady state part. Okay. So what we are going to study is actually what you are asking, that what is the boundary layer that is formed and what is the concentration gradient. So how this concentration evolves in the liquid, that we are going to study. We know that in the solid the concentration will be C0 to maintain equilibrium, and just at the interface it will be C0 by Kp, but how in the liquid it changes, that is what we are going to see. So it is exactly what you are asking. Okay. So in general, the conservation of species is governed by the species conservation equation, which is similar to the energy equation. It is exactly similar to the energy equation. So you have a transient term del T of rho c. Okay. Then convective term or advective term del dot rho uc is equal to a diffusive term del dot rho d del c. Okay. So del t of rho c is the transient term, c is the concentration that we are studying, concentration in the liquid. Del dot rho uc is the change in concentration due to flow. Okay. And del dot rho d del c is the change of concentration due to diffusion, where d is the diffusivity. D is similar to thermal conductivity or thermal diffusivity. Okay. So d is the diffusivity. So now if I consider a reference frame which is moving with this velocity, okay. So if my reference frame itself is moving with the velocity v, okay. So for a reference frame moving with the velocity v, from my reference frame what do we see? So if this is the reference frame, we see that the interface is stationary, okay. But a liquid comes with minus v velocity, so liquid comes in this direction with v velocity because it comes from the right to the left side, it has a minus v velocity and it gets solidified and goes out with minus v velocity, okay. So from my moving reference point, the solidification interface is fixed, but the liquid comes with minus v velocity and goes out with minus v velocity, okay. So from a moving reference point with velocity v, I can write the equation as dou c dou t, okay. In removing, assuming density is constant, you just remove the density from everywhere. So dou c dou t is equal to minus, because it's a 1D solidification, this is, and say we are assuming that this axis is the z direction, okay. This is the z direction. So d dz of u into c, okay. If we assume that constant velocity v is constant, you can take v outside. So because the liquid is coming with minus v velocity, we have minus v velocity, u is minus v. So minus v into del c del z, okay, from this term is equal to, again this is 1D, so only variation is along the z direction and we have already eliminated rho. So d into del square t del z square, okay. So where what is z equal to 0? Z equal to 0 is the point on the moving interface, because our interface, we are moving with the interface, our coordinate system is fixed with the interface, okay. So the 0 point of the axis is at the interface itself, okay. So the 0 point of z starts from the interface itself, okay. So actually the axis is also moving forward. So from in the moving reference frame, this z equal to 0 point is always at the interface. So from this reference frame, what do you see? You see that the solidification is always, interface is always at the 0 point and the flow comes with certain velocity and it becomes solid, okay. So from your moving reference point, it is a steady state process. That's why we have made the reference from point moving, okay. So that we obtain a steady state process. From this moving reference point, it is a steady state process. Although from the absolute reference frame, it is the unsteady process. Because we have changed the reference frame, we see it as a steady state process. No change is occurring with time. If you go to another point also, you will exactly see the same thing. That the solidification interface is at z equal to 0 and liquid is coming with velocity v and going out with certain velocity. And concentration also remains similar. So wherever you go, you will see that on your right hand side, the concentration gradient is like this. And on the left hand side, the concentration is like this, okay. At this steady state, we are ignoring the far away part. So a near part, the concentration in the solid is like this and concentration in the liquid is like this, okay. Always you will see from this moving point, okay. So the boundary layer remains steady if you are moving with the boundary layer. As a result, from the moving reference point, this del c del t term goes to 0, okay, and we are left with these two terms only. Minus v del c del z is equal to d del square c del z square. You can ask any questions if you are confused, okay. Feel free to ask questions. So by rearranging these terms, we get del square c del z square plus v into del c del z equal to 0, or del square c del means d del b was here. So ultimately you get del square c del z square plus v by d del c del z equal to 0. Okay. So this is our governing equation from the moving.
Here v is interface velocity, right?
V is the interface velocity, but
Hello. Why is
Yes.
it negative?
Because our reference frame is now moving with the interface. Okay. So now we are moving with so our reference frame is moving with the interface. Okay. So from our reference frame, the interface has what velocity? If you are moving with the interface has zero velocity. Okay. So what is the velocity of the liquid now in the moving frame? The liquid is moving with v velocity. Means the concentration, like it's difficult to draw here, but I will try to draw. Say you are moving with the reference frame, okay, and this is your z equal to 0. This is your z equal to 0 point, okay. So from your viewpoint, you always see the concentration like this in the liquid, and in the solid, the concentration is always like this. Okay. Just wait for a minute, I will explain. So in the concentration in the solid is like this, and the concentration in the liquid is like this from your reference point. If you are moving at v velocity, okay. So from your moving reference point, the solidification interface is fixed, and on the right hand side always the concentration looks like this, and on the left hand side always it looks like this. But in real life, what is happening? The concentration gradient was like this at one instant of time. At another instant of time, the concentration gradient is like this. And another instant of time, the concentration gradient is like this. So the concentration gradient is actually moving forward because the solidification is moving forward. But from your moving reference point, you always see a static solid concentration gradient. Now this equation, the conservation of species, has an unsteady term, advective term, and diffusive term. So in the advective term, this velocity is the velocity of the material. Okay, the velocity of the fluid or
Okay,
the
okay,
solid.
sir. I thought it is velocity of interface.
No, no, it cannot be velocity of the interface. You consider heat transfer. So in the heat transfer equation,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
correct? Okay. So I will just complete this discussion. So for heat transfer equation, for example, this velocity is the velocity of the liquid, and you get del dot rho u Cp into T. Similarly, this velocity here is the velocity of the liquid. From your moving reference point, the velocity of the liquid is minus v, because the liquid is coming in the opposite direction. Okay. So now this is the equation that we have derived, del square c del z square plus v by d del c del z equal to 0. This is the equation of concentration gradient or the concentration in our moving reference frame. Okay. The steady state diffusion field add of the moving interface is governed by this equation. So diffusion field, okay, this gradient is governed by this equation. So we can find this gradient, or we can find this entire equation for this concentration variation with z distance by solving this equation. So we want to solve this equation. Okay. So solution of this equation is not trivial. Okay. So special technique is required. So because now we know how it is solved, we will just follow this solution algorithm. But initially when uh, it was developed, it was tricky. Okay. So for solving this, we have to assume that let C follows a exponential distribution. By looking at the curve, it looks like a exponential distribution. So let us first assume a solution. Let us assume, then we will see whether it works or not. Let us assume that C is equal to e to the power bz is a solution. Okay, where b is some constant. Okay, so we are assuming an exponential solution where the concentration decreases exponentially from z equal to 0 to z equal to infinity. Okay, so therefore the first derivative dc, we can write dc dz instead of del c del z. Okay, because it's just variation with respect to z. We could have written dc dz also. Okay, so del c del z is equal to b e to the power bz, and del square c del z square is b square e to the power bz. Okay, so now if you substitute these two in this relation, we obtain b square e to the power bz plus v by d b e to the power bz. Okay, I will keep this equation open here for reference. b square e to the power bz plus v by d b e to the power bz, okay, equal to 0. So which leads us to b square plus v by d b equal to 0, or if you solve it, db square plus vb is equal to 0, or b is equal to either 0 or b is equal to minus b. This is a quadratic equation. So there are two solutions, either b is equal to 0 or b is equal to minus v by d. Okay. So these are two specific solutions. If I want to write a general solution, it needs to incorporate all these specific solutions. So the general solution can be written as c is equal to a e to the power first solution, okay, first solution of b. So c is equal to a e to the power 0 into z plus b e to the power minus v by d into z. Okay. So where a and b are constants, we don't know the value of this constant here, but these are constants. Okay. So a e to the power 0 can be written as a, okay, because e to the power 0 is 1. So ultimately the solution that we have obtained for this, we don't yet know whether this is the correct solution unless we put the boundary condition and check. But at this point, with our initial assumption, we have obtained a, and because we know that the pattern looks like exponential, we have obtained an exponential solution which says that c is equal to a plus b e to the power minus v by d z, okay, where a and b are constants, whose value we have to now determine. How will we determine these values? We will determine these values based on boundary conditions. Okay, so let us look at the boundary condition. So for this calculation, we have to assume that there is no boundary on the right hand side. Okay, it's an infinitely long boundary. Otherwise, the final transient will come into picture and we cannot actually accurately calculate. Okay, so when we are doing this 1D steady state solidification, another assumption is that the boundary is in semi-infinite, means infinitely long in the right hand direction. Okay, so at z equal to infinity, obviously at far away liquid, the concentration is not changed. Far away liquid is still at C0 concentration. So at far away, the concentration remains as C0. Okay, at z equal to infinity, the concentration is C0, and z equal to 0 at the interface, we can have another boundary condition by relating how much of solute is getting rejected and how much of it is getting diffused away. Okay, so the amount of diffusion at z equal to 0 is minus d into gradient of concentration at z equal to 0. So minus d del c del z at z equal to 0. Okay, this is the amount of diffusion, that is, it is like minus k dt dx. Okay, so we know that heat flux is minus k dt dx. Similarly, mass flux or diffusion is minus d dc dz. Okay, so where d is the diffusivity and del c del z is the concentration gradient, and we want the concentration gradient at z equal to 0. So that's why I have written it at z equal to 0. This is the amount of diffusion that is occurring at the interface. Okay, this is equal to the concentration that is getting removed from the solid. Okay, because of solidification. So how much is that? Now the diagram looks very complicated because I have drawn so many things, but it will be clear from here. Let me just use some other color. It will be clear from here that the liquid concentration was Cl star. Say this is Cl star, C0 by Kp is Cl star, and the solid concentration is Cs star. Okay, Cs star is Cl star into Kp. So the extra concentration that was present here is Cl star minus Cl star into Kp. So Cl star into 1 minus Kp. So this is the extra concentration, and this is getting removed at the rate at which the interface is moving forward. So at the rate velocity v. Okay. So the rate of solute rejection is Cl star 1 minus Kp into v, which is equal to minus d del c del z at z equal to 0. We will later replace Cl star by C0 by Kp. We have not done it here, but we will replace it because we know that Cl star has to be C0 by Kp. Okay. So these are our two boundary conditions. One at z equal to 0 and another is z equal to infinity. So by putting the first boundary condition in this equation, at z equal to infinity we obtain C0 is equal to, at z equal to infinity, C is equal to C0. So C is equal to a plus b e to the power minus v by d into infinity. So e to the power minus infinity is 0. So this term goes to 0. So a is equal to c0. Okay. So we can write c is equal to c0 plus b e to the power minus v by d z. Now we have to find the value of v. Okay. So again, let me. That is the difficulty if you are not using boards in the classroom. You have to go back and forth a lot. This is our equation and these are the boundary conditions, right? This is the boundary condition that we are going to use now. So CL star into 1 minus Kp V is equal to minus del C del Z and Z equal to 0. Okay. Let us find del C del Z from this expression. So del C del Z is equal to 0 plus B into minus V by D into e to the power minus V by dz, or minus B into V by D e to the power minus V by dz, or del C del Z at Z equal to 0 is, you replace Z, this Z equal to 0, this will become 1. So minus VB BV by D. Okay. So CL star into 1 minus Kp into V is equal to minus D into minus BV by D. Okay. Or by rearranging, we obtain, not by rearranging, directly you can see by just cancelling the terms, we can obtain B is equal to CL star into 1 minus Kp. Okay. Now a steady state CL star has to be equal to C0, we have discussed. So CL star has to be C0 by Kp. So B is equal to C0 by Kp into 1 minus Kp. Okay. Where is our diagram? Okay. So CS has to be C0. Otherwise, we will not have the average concentration. So Cl has to be C0 by Kp. So B is equal to C0 by Kp into 1 minus Kp. Or we can rearrange this as C0 by Kp minus C0. This term is generally written as delta C0. Okay. So what is the physical interpretation of this term? This term is the difference between this line and this line. Okay. C0 by Kp minus C0. So this distance. So this distance is written as delta C0. Okay. So C is equal to C0 plus delta C0 by replacing V plus delta C0 e to the power minus V Z by D. Okay. Ultimately, we obtain that this is the equation, final equation for concentration variation. Okay. So you can see that if I put Z equal to 0, what is the concentration? Z equal to 0. This term goes to 1. So it is C0 plus delta C0. So C0 is up to this point plus delta C0, this line. So the concentration is C0 plus delta C0, this amount. Okay. And if the Z is infinity, so this term, entire term goes to 0. So far away the concentration is C0. Okay. So it satisfies this two boundary condition. At Z equal to 0, it is C0 plus delta C0, and far away it is just C0. Okay. And in between the variation is exponential and is given by this expression C0 plus delta C0 e to the power minus Vz by D. So this is the concentration variation in the liquid. Okay. Or the equation for the boundary layer. Any questions? You go through it, it's not difficult to understand once you assume that we are in a moving reference frame. Okay. So first time deriving it is difficult, but because we know the solution, for us it is easy. But the person who has derived it for the first time, for him it was difficult because you do not know what is the approach to take, what is the solution to take, what is the approach to take. So whether we have to take a moving boundary layer or moving grid or not, then whether we have to take what type of solution, logarithmic or exponential, what is to be taken. So mathematicians are expert in these areas, in how to solve this type of equations. So let us go through some details, okay, about our solution. Where is our solution? Okay, let us go through some details about this solution. Let me just change the color. About this solution. So the boundary layer given by the equation is infinite in length. Okay. So only at infinity this value goes to C0. Okay. So we have an infinite boundary layer theoretically. Obviously in real life there will be a boundary on the right hand side, where the domain will end. But theoretical boundary layer is infinite because we have started with the assumption that we have an infinite long length. Okay. However, for convenience, the boundary length is taken of a particular length delta c. Okay. A boundary layer of length delta c is defined such that, so how is it defined? It is defined such that the boundary layer contains the same amount of solute as the infinite layer, okay, and has a constant gradient across its length, okay. So for example, if we come to this case, the actual boundary layer looks like this, the red colored line, but we define a boundary layer which has a constant gradient, okay, so it is a straight line and has the same amount of solute within it. So the area under this curve, so this area within the triangle, okay, is equal to the area between this line and this line, okay. So the area within the triangle equal to the area between this line and this line, okay. So the area under the, so the solute, extra solute in the boundary layer in real life is equal to the solute within the triangular boundary layer which we have artificially defined, and the length of this boundary layer is delta c. We have to find what is delta c by equating the volume of solute. So volume of solute in the triangle is equal to the volume of solute in the infinite boundary layer. By equating this, we have to find the length of the artificial boundary layer, because we cannot just assume infinite boundary layer in real life scenario for solving problems. So area of the triangle is delta c0. This length, this distance is delta c0. Remember, we have defined this as delta c0. So area of this length is delta c0, and this length is boundary layer length delta c, okay, small delta c. So delta c0 into delta c by 2 is the area of the triangle, okay. This is the amount of solute that is present within the triangle. This is equal to the amount of solute which is present within this boundary layer, excess solute, so greater than c0, okay. So which is equal to, so if I subtract C0 from this equation, C minus C0, I will get the extra solute in the boundary layer, which is equal to delta C0 e to the power minus Vz by d. Okay. So delta C0 e to the power minus Vz by d, going from 0 to infinity, integral of dz. Okay. So this gives us the extra solute within this region. Okay. So let me just again go back to this equation. Okay. So C0 plus delta C0 e to the power Vz by d is the equation of this curve. Okay. If I subtract C0, I get the area between this line and this line. So area of the boundary layer. Okay. So if you subtract C0, you get the equation delta C0 e to the power minus Vz by d. Okay. So we integrate it from 0 to infinity. So area of the triangle delta C0 delta C by 2 is equal to 0 to infinity delta C0 e to the power minus Vz by d into dz. Delta C0 gets cancelled. So delta C is equal to minus 2d by v. Okay. Why minus 2d by v? This 2 comes from this side, and this d by v, because we have introduced a minus v by d within this differential. Okay. So minus v by d. So extra d by v we are multiplying outside, minus d by v, so that we can integrate it. So delta c is equal to minus 2d by v. So integral of this is e to the power minus Vz by d, going from 0 to infinity. Okay. So at 0, at infinity, the value is e to the power minus infinity, which is 0. At 0, the value is e to the power 0, which is 1. Okay. So this delta c is minus 2d by v, 0 minus 1, which is equal to 2d by v. Okay. So we can relate the boundary layer length. Okay, we can relate the boundary layer length to the diffusivity and the velocity. If the velocity is very large, the boundary layer will have a shorter length like this. If the velocity is small, the diffusion will be dominant process and the boundary layer will have a long length. Okay. Similarly, if the diffusivity is large, diffusion will be a dominant process and the boundary layer will have a very large length. If the diffusivity is small, the boundary layer will be very small. If I have infinite diffusivity, the boundary layer will be of infinite length. The triangle will become like this. Okay. So only in the case of infinite diffusivity you get a variation like this. For any finite diffusivity you get variations like this. Okay. So depending on the diffusivity, the length of the boundary layer, this artificial boundary layer will increase. Okay. Similarly, slope of the actual boundary layer will also change based on the diffusivity. If I have higher diffusivity, the slope of the actual boundary layer will look like this. Okay. If I have lower diffusivity, the slope of the boundary layer will look like this. So based on the diffusivity, the actual boundary layer slope also changes, and our artificial boundary layer also changes. Okay. So it depends on the diffusivity. I guess this will even explain better, Nikhil's, your question about the boundary layer. Okay. How the why there is a concentration gradient that is present. So just one final point before we conclude this part and go into the final process. Okay. So for the equivalent boundary layer, what is the gradient at the interface? So the gradient at the interface is not equal to the actual gradient that is obtained for the infinite boundary layer. So if I consider the triangle, I have drawn so many things here that it looks very bad. Let me show you here. If I consider this triangle, the gradient at the interface, let us call this as GC dash. Okay, gradient at the interface, let us call this as GC dash. Okay, so this is basically slope of this line, which is minus delta C0. It's a negative slope, so minus this length by this length, minus delta C0 by delta C. Okay, if I put the value of delta C is 2d by V. If I put the value, we get GC dash is equal to minus delta C0 into V by 2d. Okay, this is the gradient of the triangle. The actual boundary layer gradient is GC is equal to del C del Z at Z equal to 0. So if you calculate this based on the concentration that we had obtained, okay, based on the concentration we have obtained, del C del Z, you have to calculate at Z equal to 0. You will find that this is equal to delta C 0 into minus V by D into e to the power minus Vz by D at Z equal to 0. So this term becomes equal to 1. So this is equal to minus delta C0 V by D. Okay. So the artificial boundary layer has a gradient. You can see that it has a larger gradient. Its gradient is it is a this actual boundary layer has a larger gradient, as we can see. It has a sharper slope. Okay, so which is equal to minus C0 V by D. The artificial boundary layer has a slope of minus C0 V by 2D. Okay, so the absolute value of the concentration gradient is twice the absolute mean concentration gradient of the equivalent boundary layer. Okay, so the mean concentration gradient is half of the actual concentration gradient at the interface. Okay, so this is just for analyzing. If you want to analyze using equivalent boundary layer, we can analyze based on this equation. If you want to analyze it using the actual boundary layer, we can analyze using the actual equation that we have derived. Any questions? Otherwise, we will take a break here. So we have discussed about the steady state part of the 1D solidification. We will not study about the initial transient, which is much more difficult to analyze, or the final transient, which is even difficult. Analytically, it is not possible. Okay, or it is too difficult. We need a lot of assumptions. For the steady state part, we have seen how the concentration evolves in the liquid. Okay, so this was the main task of this case. So the final process that we are going to study. So I will skip these parts. Okay, you can note that this is not part of the syllabus. The initial transient part. Okay, 3-4 pages are there. So this initial transient part is we are not going to study this time. Okay, it's not necessary. Okay, and the final transient part also. Final transient anyway I have not studied last time also. I just shown how the final transient looks like. So let me just explain this how it looks like. So initial transient will look like this. Then we have the steady state part, and once the boundary layer touches the end, okay, so the diffusion cannot occur properly because the boundary layer cannot go to C0 far away. So as a result, the diffusion is reduced, and as a result, the concentration in the solid keeps on increasing. Okay, so the final solid concentration keeps on increasing, and you get a final solid concentration like this. So it goes to infinity at at the end of the solid. Okay, so the final solid concentration looks like something like this. If I come back to this, initially it looks like this. Then we have studied the steady state part, and finally the boundary layer becomes different. It cannot go to C0, okay, because of the physical end of the domain of the mold. Okay, so as a result, the diffusion is reduced, and so more solute accumulates in the boundary layer. So finally, more and more solute accumulates in the boundary layer, and the boundary layer looks like this. This is the final concentration gradient. Okay. So CS becomes higher than C0 as the accumulated solute cannot diffuse away, as there cannot be any diffusion. The final transient starts when the boundary layer thickness is comparable to the length of the remaining liquid zone. Okay, and the boundary layer interacts with the system boundary. So anyway, we will not go into further details. Any questions on what we have studied? Otherwise, we will just briefly discuss another process mathematically, which is known as zone melting. Okay, so I will take a 5 minutes break. It won't take much time to finish this part. I will take a 5 minutes break and then we will continue. Okay. If you have any questions, you can think in between. So we'll continue. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the final example that we are going to take is a very interesting process, actually very simple and clever process, which is known as zone melting. So what happens is, say if you have an impure material, okay, if you have a material which has some impurities, okay, so it is supposed to be a pure material. For example, here they are showing pure germanium, and it is containing some impurities. Okay, so it is acting like a binary material. The impurities are the solute basically. So if you want to remove these impurities, one option would be to melt the entire material and then remove the impurities and then again resolidify it. But it's a very costly process because you have to melt, or very cumbersome process because you have to melt the entire material and again form the remove the impurities and form the pure material or solidify the pure material. So instead of that, by using a clever mechanism, what we can do is that we know that. So let me just first explain the process. Okay. So you have a rod like this. Okay. You have a rod like this, which is containing the impurities. Okay. So this dot shows the impurities. Now there is a small heating coil which has a very small length. Okay. Length is much less than the length of the material. Okay. So when you pass this material through this heating coil, what happens is that there will be melting that will happen like this. There will be melting that will happen. And when the material goes out of the coil, outside it is cold, so it will solidify. Now, because we know that during solidification, the ratio of the concentration in the liquid and in the solid has to be in the ratio of the partition coefficient. Means in the solid, if the concentration is Cs, in the liquid it has to be Kp into, sorry, if the in the liquid if it is Cl, in the solid it has to be Kp into Cl. Okay. So what happens is that the solid that forms with a much less concentration of the impurities, because partitioning coefficient is much less generally. Partition coefficient will be of the order of 0.1 or even less. So the new solid that forms has a much less concentration of the impurities, okay, as compared to the original impurities. And all these impurities get accumulated in the liquid, okay. So the liquid concentration keeps on increasing and the solid concentration also increases, but not much, okay. So ultimately when you pass the entire material, after one pass, most of the impurities get accumulated in the last region, in the liquid region or in the last region that solidifies. So if you, and there will be some impurities which are left due to partitioning in the solid, say 10% amount. Okay. Now if you repeat this process again and again, okay, you can reduce the impurities drastically in the solid. So if I do it 5 times, so 5 passes or 4 passes, we will reduce the impurities in the solid drastically, and then we can just cut off this final part where all the impurities are solidified. We can just remove this final part and we will have a very pure material. Okay, this process is known as zone melting. Okay, so either you move the material or you keep the material fixed. Generally the material is kept fixed and the heater is moved at a constant velocity from one side to the other side. So the main advantage here is that you are just melting a very small part. You are not melting the entire material. Just melting a very small part, and you are not doing anything to remove the impurities also. Just because of physics, the impurities are getting, because of partitioning, the impurities are getting accumulated in the liquid, and we are obtaining solid which is much more pure. Okay. So this is the, like, using a very simple process but very clever process, we can assume we can achieve lot of purity uh, in a material. Okay, so this is the process. Any questions? So this we are going to study now mathematically. Okay. So we will assume a schematic diagram like this. So where you have a solid body and then there is a heating coil. Okay, the heating coil is moving forward. So it's, we have a, and within the heating coil we have a small liquid zone. Okay, the liquid zone is floating or moving liquid zone because it is moving forward with the coils. Okay, so if I orient this in a defined manner, I can draw like this. Okay, where the coils have started moving from the left hand side and it's moved up to a certain length x. Okay, at this point, the length of the coils is small l. Okay, so the liquid zone has a length of small l, and on either side we have solid. On the one side we have pure solid, means relatively pure solid. On the other side we have solid of concentration C0. So initially we are assuming that the entire concentration of the solid is C0, means it has impurities or the second element with concentration C0, and we want to see how the concentration varies within the solidified structure. Okay, once we have one pass of the heater from left side to right side, we want to find out what is the concentration variation within the solid. Okay, so it will give us an idea about how much reduction of concentration has occurred in one pass. So we can repeat it again and again to find out about the how much purity we can obtain. Okay, so at this point, if I see this point, we will keep the diagram in this case open here. Okay, so what do we see? So initially, what will be the concentration of the first solid form? So first liquid. So initially everything is solid with concentration C0. So the first liquid, when it melts, will still have concentration C0 because that was the amount of impurity that was present in the solid. So after melting also it will be the same amount of concentration will be present in the liquid because no extra solute can come in the liquid. Okay. So because the first liquid forms with concentration C0, the first solid after resolidification, the first solid forms with concentration Kp into C0. Well, Kp is the partition coefficient, has a very small number, maybe 0.01 or 0.05 or 0.1 like this. Now what is happening? So the heater has moved forward. Okay, so heater has moved forward, and say at this point, this is the molten region. Okay, this is the molten region. So because initially, and this is the solidified part. Okay, this is the solidified part. Initially in this region, the concentration was C0, but now it is around Kp into C0, slightly larger than Kp into C0. So this extra amount of solute that was present has gone into the liquid. As a result, the concentration of the liquid has increased now. So instead of C0, the concentration is somewhat larger. Okay. So this keeps on happening and the concentration in the liquid keeps on increasing. Okay. So at some point, say we have reached a position where the concentration in the liquid is Cl. Okay, the concentration in the liquid is Cl. And at that point, obviously, the concentration in the solid is Kp into Cl. Okay, the concentration in the solid is Kp into Cl. Okay. So in the liquid it is Cl, in the solid it is Kp into Cl. And we want to find out now this variation, how it is occurring. Okay, so I will go through some of the written notes here to summarize what we are discussing. In zone melting, the impurities in a metal is reduced by melting a small portion using a moving heater and by moving the melt pool from one end to the other end. Okay, we have already discussed. Say the initial concentration of solute or impurity is C0 along the entire length. Okay, it is C0 along the entire length. When a portion of the solid melts and again solidifies, the concentration in the resolidified region changes based on the liquid concentration Cl and the partition coefficient Kp. Okay. As the liquid pool moves from one side to the other side, the impurities gets accumulated in the moving melt pool and finally at the end of the solidified material. We want to find out what is the new concentration in the solid after one pass of the heater. Okay, what is the concentration of the solid after one pass of the heater? To do this, let us consider this diagram. Okay, again the same diagram that I was showing. So at some position we have reached a concentration Cl. Okay, and in the liquid the concentration is Kp into Cl. In the solid the concentration is Kp into Cl. Okay. and we have come to a length of x. Okay, we have reached a length x at this position. So if a little bit more melting and solidification occurs, if we move the heater by dx length, okay. So if we move the heater by dx length, what is happening? So in the liquid the concentration was Cl, and in the new solid that will form, the concentration will be KpCl. So this amount of excess solute Cl minus KpCl into dx will go into the liquid. Okay, it will go into the liquid. Now when the liquid is melting, it is also melting in the other side. Okay, here it is solidifying, but it is melting by dx length in the other side, this length in the other side. So here the initial solid concentration was C0. Now the concentration has increased to say Cl. Okay, if we ignore that dCl is very small, so the concentration has increased to Cl. Okay. So some amount of extra concentration has to come here. Okay. So from here this concentration that is getting removed is Cl minus KpCl, and some extra concentration is coming here, which is Cl minus C0. Okay. So this amount of concentration Cl minus C0 gets balanced by the concentration which comes here, Cl minus C0. Okay. So what is left is this excess concentration C0 minus KpCl. Okay. Where will this excess concentration go? C0 minus KpCl. This will go in increasing the concentration in the liquid. So in the liquid the concentration has increased by dCl. Okay, very small amount dCl, and length of the liquid is L. Okay. So L into dCl. L into dCl. Okay, this is the area of this. This is this area. Okay, L into dCl. So this is the increase in concentration in the liquid. This is equal to the extra concentration that was rejected from the solid, which is equal to C0 minus KpCl into dx. Okay, C0 minus KpCl into dx. In case you are confused which areas we are equating, one area is this area. Okay, L into dCl. This is equal to this area. Okay, this is equal to this area. Okay, why we are equating these two areas? Because this area and this area are equal already. They are getting cancelled. So we are left with this area and this area. Okay. So C0 minus KpCl into dx length. C0 minus KpCl into dx length is equal to L length into dCl. Okay. So this is our governing equation for the zone melting process. This will give us the variation of concentration. Okay, this governing equation. So now if we rearrange dx by L going from 0 to x is equal to dCl minus C0 minus KpCl going from C0 to Cl. Okay, why C0 to Cl? Because initially the liquid concentration was C0 and now it has reached Cl. Okay, so when x was 0, our concentration was C0 in the liquid. When x is equal to x, our concentration is Cl in the liquid. So when x varies from 0 to x, our concentration goes from C0 to Cl. Okay. So now if we integrate this, we get x by L equal to minus 1 by Kp. You can just write this d into C0 minus KpCl by taking minus 1 by Kp common. So minus 1 by Kp ln C0 minus KpCl. There should be a bracket here. Okay, this bracket is missing. It should be ln C0 minus KpCl. Okay, going from C0 to Cl. So at C0 this is equal to ln C0 minus KpC0, and at Cl this is equal to ln C0 minus KpCl. So we can rearrange now by taking this Kp and negative sign to the other side. So we have minus Kpx by L is equal to ln C0 minus KpCl when this is Cl divided by C0 minus KpC0, which is equal to C0 1 minus Kp. Okay. So now it's a matter of rearranging. So if you remove the log, we get e to the power minus Kpx by L is equal to C0 minus KpCl by C0 1 minus Kp, or if you rearrange the terms, you get Cl is equal to C0 by Kp 1 minus Kp e to the power minus Kpx by L. Okay. So this is the concentration, this is the variation of concentration in the liquid with variation of x. Okay, when the x changes, how the Cl value changes. Okay, what we have assumed that there is no concentration gradient in the, so there was an assumption here which no one of you have noticed, that the Cl remains constant within the liquid. Okay, it is not decreasing like this, like our previous case. Why we have assumed Cl to be constant although the diffusivity is limited? Because the length is assumed to be very small. We are assuming that there is not much concentration gradient within the liquid. Okay, because the length of the heater is very small, the concentration remains almost equal to Cl everywhere. Okay, so the effect of diffusion is very negligible. So this Cl varies with x. So when the heater is moving, this Cl varies as per this equation. So Cs, which is always equal to Kpcl, varies as per this equation. Cs is equal to Kpcl, which is equal to, so Kp gets cancelled. C0 1 minus Kp e to the power minus Kpx by L. This gives us the variation of concentration. Okay, so if I go back to this gives us the variation of concentration within the solid. Okay, after one pass. So initial concentration in the solid is Kpc0. It gradually keeps on increasing because the liquid concentration also increases, and at x equal to infinity, theoretically it goes to C0. Okay. You can put the boundary values to C. At x equal to 0, this term becomes e to the power minus 0, so 1. So 1 minus 1 plus Kp, so this becomes 0 plus Kp, so Kp into C0. So Cs is equal to Kpc0 at x equal to 0. At x equal to infinity, this term goes to 0, so Cs equal to C0. Okay, so at infinity Cs equal. So what we have seen is that initial solid concentration was C0, but we have decreased the solid concentration. Okay, at least more in the initial part. At the final part, it is not much decreased. Okay, so what will happen towards the end, because the length is not infinity, towards the end, the solute will keep on piling up. When the liquid region, when the first last region is of the length of the order of L, okay, the heater comes in contact with the final part. Okay, so there is no place for the solute to go anymore. So the solute will pile up and the final part will have increasing solute concentration. This part cannot be given by this equation. Okay, so the equation fails to give this part, so this extra part. So this equation is valid when we are at a region which is more than L length from the end. Okay, once you come within L distance from the end, you will have this final transient which the equation cannot capture. So this is after one pass. If you have multiple pass, so after the second pass, again there will be decrease in concentration, because the original concentration now is this concentration. The new concentration will be like this. Okay, and after third pass, again the new concentration will be like this. So the concentration keeps on decreasing. So after multiple passes, you have a much more pure material. Okay, as compared to the initial material. So this is the analysis of zone melting process. Can anybody say I have 10% impurity initially, okay, and partition coefficient is 0.1, okay, Kp is 0.1. After three passes, what will be the percentage of impurity at the beginning of the solid? After one pass, what will be the percentage of impurity at the beginning of the solid? Initial impurity is 10%. Okay, C0 is 10% and Kp is 0.1. So what will be the impurity percentage after one pass at the beginning of the solid? Very easy to answer. This type of questions you can expect in the final exam. Let me repeat again. Initial concentration in the solid, initial concentration of impurities is 10%. Okay, so C0 is 10% or 0.1. So after one pass with partition coefficient for this process is 0.1. What will be the initial concentration of the impurities? One line answer.
1%.
1%. So after two passes,
0.1.
0.1%, correct. After 3 passes, it will be 0.01%. So it will drastically decrease in the initial phase. Although I am drawing it like this because I don't have this space here. Actually, it will decrease by large amounts in each case. Okay, it will not decrease by the small amounts. It will decrease by large amount in each case. So you have a significant reduction. You can see that after 3 passes, the initial concentration is 0.01%. Okay, instead of 10%. And up to a certain length, there will be significant decrease. So we can take up to that length as a relatively pure material. Okay. So this is how you can derive. Similar problems also you should be able to tackle. Okay. I have given one in the, I don't know whether I uploaded it or not. Otherwise, I will upload a solved problem sheet. Okay. Where you have an extra problem. I don't think I have uploaded yet, right? No, I will upload one problem sheet where you have a similar problem. Okay, similar to the zone melting process. Although it's not zone melting, but it uses the same concept, 1D solidification, and we can easily find out the final value. Okay, and I will upload another problem, which is from the initial part, the Childs equation and lever rule based on the phase diagram. Those type of problems also you should be able to answer. So those I will upload today itself. Okay. So finally, what we have discussed in this part. First part, the major part of this of my part was we had two special topics. Okay, so I will just conclude the course now. We had two special topics. One was the non-Newtonian fluid part, and second part was on the concentration variation during solidification. Okay, and most of the normal syllabus was covered by Dr. Rath itself. So I only had to teach the two special parts. Okay, so in the non-Newtonian part, we had discussed a lot of things. We had discussed different generalized Newtonian fluid. Then we have discussed about viscoelastic fluids also. And then in the concentration variation and solidification part, we have started with phase diagrams. Then we have seen how the microstructure evolves in for different cases, for different concentrations. And then we have seen the cooling curves, temperature versus time for different cases. And we have also seen if we assume full diffusivity in solid and liquid, how the concentration, what will be the concentration we can calculate using lever rule. And if we assume zero diffusivity in the solid and full diffusivity in the liquid, how we can calculate the concentration variation based on the Childs law. So this we have seen the concentration variation with respect to the volume fraction. You can assume that with the length of the material or with volume fraction. Okay. So after that, today we have seen two special problems. One problem is for 1D directional solidification, where we have seen how the concentration varies in the liquid region for a steady state case. And then finally we have seen a case of zone melting, where we have seen how the concentration varies after a single pass of zone melting. Okay, so this is also assuming 1D solidification. And although the equation looks quite complicated, we have seen that the problem was actually very simple, few lines only. Okay, once we can draw the diagram correctly, it's only a few lines. Okay, so finally we will conclude by having some general discussion over general concentration problems. Okay, so what we have discussed is variation of concentration during solidification for 1D problems to analytical solution. Okay. So for actual problems where you have a 3D casting or 3D welding, the problems are much more complicated. Okay, so you cannot solve them using analytical solution. So in that case, what we have to do, we have to again go back to the general conservation equation, species conservation equation. So the species conservation equation looks like this: del del T of rho c. We have discussed today also. There is a transient term, del del T of rho c is equal to del dot rho u c. This is the advective term, is equal to del dot rho d del c, which is the diffusive term. Okay, where c is the average concentration and d is the average diffusivity. Okay, and this is exactly like the energy equation. So we can, if we develop a CFD solver for solving the energy equation, we can use the same solver for solving the concentration equation also. So the solution process is exactly same. So if you are using, say, simpler algorithm, simpler will be for solving velocity, but say you are using implicit method, okay, for solving the energy equation, we can also use implicit method for solving the concentration. Those who have studied CFD will know these things. Okay, we will not, that is not part of our course, we will not go into the details, but it is just we should know that we can solve these equations using numerical techniques like CFD, okay, and for a 3D or 2D geometry, but using analytical solution it is not possible. Okay. So now in real life scenario we will also have flow in the domain. Okay, we have not studied anything about flow in these simple processes, but there will be flow in the domain, and this flow can occur due to various factors. What can be the factors? So one can be that shrinkage will occur. So in real life what happens, the solid has lower volume, means higher density as compared to the liquid. So the same mass of solid will occupy a lower volume. Okay, so because the same mass of the solid will occupy a lower volume, when solidification is going on, there will be a flow towards the solidification interface to compensate for the shrinkage that is happening at the interface. So it will result in a flow towards the interface. So there will be flow because of shrinkage. Then there is flow due to natural convection. There are two types of natural convection. One you have already studied, must have studied in thermodynamics, which is known as thermal buoyancy effect. Okay, so because of variation of density due to variation in temperature, wherever the temperature is higher, the density is low. Wherever the temperature is lower, the density is high. So at higher temperature regions, because of lower density, it will be lighter, it will try to float up, and the regions where there is lower temperature, it will be heavier and it will try to go down. So there will be a natural convection pattern that will be set up. Okay. Similar thing also is obtained because of concentration variation. Okay. So this you might not have studied, but what happens is that at some location, if the concentration is high, assume that we have an alloy of aluminum and copper. Okay. Copper has much higher density as compared to aluminum, 3 times higher density as compared to aluminum. So if at some location the concentration of copper is larger and in another location the concentration of copper is smaller, the region where the concentration of copper is larger will have much higher average density. So it will try to go down, and wherever the concentration of copper is lower, it will have much lower average density, it will try to move up. So it will also result in some convection pattern. This is also known as natural convection, but this is known as solutal buoyancy driven convection because it is because of solutal buoyancy, not thermal buoyancy. Then because of surface tension effect also, there can be flow at the surface of the liquid. Okay, this is seen in case of welding or laser melting. Because the surface tension changes with temperature gradient. Wherever there is large temperature gradient, the surface tension will change, and that will result in flow in that direction. Okay. Sometimes there is formation of gas impurities or gas bubbles, which will also expand and result in flow. So all these are internal factors of flow. Then we can also provide some flow to improve the process, to refine the grain structure. These are known as external factors for flow. So we can provide centrifugal forces. We can rotate the casting mode at a very large velocity. So it will create centrifugal force within the liquid, which will also create velocity, means which will also result in flow in the liquid. Okay. Similarly, we can provide electromagnetic forces. So we can provide electromagnetic forces to induce flow within the liquid. Okay. So why do we want to force flow within the liquid? Because when there is flow within the liquid, it breaks down the microstructure into finer microstructure, which results in much more stronger, much more higher strength. Okay, so that's why. So final comment is that the species conservation equation is exactly similar to the energy conservation equation and can be solved in the same way using the same algorithm and solver we have already discussed. So this equation can be solved in the same way as the energy equation using the same algorithm and solver. Okay, so with this we will conclude our course. Any questions? I will stop the recording.